Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to season 2 of Conversations in Pop Culture, where I have with me cosplayer Danielle DeNicola, who was on about 4 years ago. So welcome back.
Thank you for having me back. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited to have you back on because we had a bunch of fun the last time, and a lot of fun stuff has happened in the last 4 years. And before we dive into some of the newer stuff, I sort of want to catch everybody up on some of your cosplays that people know. And I think the best one to start with is Android 18.
Thank you for saying that. I love her so much. It was my first costume ever that I've ever made ever. And I just keep every couple of years, I like revisit it and like fix it up a little bit more and then a little bit more. And then I'll like do like a little variation. And I just recently tore up my first costume completely and did like a battle damage version. Very excited.
So let's catch everybody up to speed. So obviously you're sort of known for Android 18. There's a few others that we're also going to touch upon. So what age drew you to Android 18? And I know we spoke about this in the last interview that we did, but I want to make sure everybody's somewhat caught up so that if they didn't catch the last one, you know, they all have a starting point.
Right. Well, I grew up watching Dragon Ball Z, as we all did on Saturday morning cartoons. But I loved Android from the moment I saw her because she was also blonde. That was like what caught me first, because usually when I was young, the only thing that I saw was like the blondes in media were just stupid. They're just dumb blondes and then smart brunettes, and that's it. That was the only thing. So when I saw Android being like a total like badass, I was like, okay, blondes can be cool too. Love her. And I just like stuck onto her forever. Plus she's amazing. So she's my favorite.
So then to even go, because this was the traditional version, and then obviously this sort of expanded, and one of the versions that you've done also is her bikini version, which I enjoy, and obviously Red Ribbon Army. And so how did that even come about? Because obviously that is meant for certain cons. I think Colossal Con is one of the cons that really sort of goes to that one, or going to the beach, if you so choose.
Yeah. Right. Well, there's so many beach episodes of anime and stuff. So there's a con called Colossal Con that is in a water park. So a lot of people do like swimsuit versions of anime and video game characters. And then there's also this new convention called YetiCon, which I love. It's one of my favorite conventions right now. Whenever we can go back to conventions, it's in Canada, and it's the same type of deal as Colossal, where you fly in, you have to rent a car and drive like an hour. But it's in the mountains of Canada, and it's this little like village with a bunch of hotels, and it's not a water park, but there's pools everywhere, and there's like a waterfall and all this like cute water-esque type of stuff. So a lot of people have been doing swimsuit versions of costumes for that convention as well. It's fun.
And then obviously the latest one is the pink tracksuit. Before we get to that stuff, and so that one I think was done up in Canada also, and obviously that is sort of newer than the rest, and that's from Dragon Ball Super, which is also newer, I think, to say the least. And so how did that even come about? Because that seems such anti-Android 18.
I know. Well, she became like a cute mom in Super. She has Krillin and her daughter, and I don't know. I love her. And so I did the tracksuit for Fan Expo Canada 2 years ago now. And my friends have a clothing brand called Pink City. It's a Canadian clothing brand, and obviously they're from Canada and they do business in Canada. So they were at the Canadian convention, and they sell the pink tracksuit for Android. And I had talked to them about doing like a collab before, and I messaged them like, please tell me you have one pink tracksuit for Android, because I want to cosplay Android at Fan Expo. And they were like, no, we don't. Like, we only have one, and it's for show purposes. We don't have any more to sell. And I was like, bummed, but it was fine. And I brought my regular outfit anyway. And they surprised me at the con with one. And it was so cute. I love them so much. Their stuff is amazing.
So what is that like? Because it's obviously Super is definitely a transition for Android 18 as a character. Versus, we have her as this badass. I don't mean to say it this way, but she's sort of a cold-hearted bitch in the Dragon Ball Z series, like to put it bluntly. And then obviously she changes over time. And then in Super, she becomes a lot kinder. She sort of gets it a little bit, even towards the end of Dragon Ball, during the tournaments with the Hercules thing, where she like breaks the machine, starting to get a little warmer. And so, what is that like to have that transition with your cosplays? Because obviously the first one is very much, that Android arc saga. And then this is obviously much nicer, for lack of a better word. Softer is a good word.
Yeah, no, I like it. I like that they gave her like a softer side. I think that because what did she know? It was just Dr. Gero and the other androids, and she was programmed to kill this dude. So, I don't know. Once she got her little family and kind of got like a place to live and a place to exist, I like that she opened up a little bit and became more of like a human with human emotions. I like it. I like soft android.
And then the one I want to talk about, and the one I want to talk about that I think is the newest one and the most interesting in many ways is your battle damage, because you stated at the top that you sort of ripped up your first one, you sort of, I guess, tore it up, made it actually damaged. And what was that like? Because obviously it's not retiring a cosplay when you do that. I guess technically it's probably transforming it, I think is the word.
Yeah.
But you're also semi-retiring it and Viking funeraling it, for lack of a better word.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's the best way to send it off. Honestly, with Android in particular, I think that's because she loves clothes, and she loved to go shopping and stuff, even when she was the cold-hearted bitch version. I don't know. It felt right. The Viking send-off felt right. And it was really cathartic, actually, because I remade Android better, way better, obviously, being my first costume ever to, 4 or 5 years experience. It was cathartic for me to sit down with it and be like, wow, this is how I did this last time. Like, let me just rip it up to shreds, like with scissors. And I was watching her Netflix show where these like people turn into zombies, but they're like monsters and not really zombies, and they're like destroying everything. So I was like watching this show about destruction, like also like ripping this skirt to shreds. It was very nice, honestly. It released a lot of stress.
Full circle. And so what was that like though? Because obviously you put a lot of work, you rebuilt this. This is your first one. And obviously you have a bunch of photos and a bunch of stuff up on your Instagram with that first one. But even this idea of doing this and like, because I would imagine that it would be painful.
It was
like,
I
have a hard time taking apart my Legos and rebuilding something by itself, let alone, doing something like this, which can't be necessarily rebuilt so easily. So it's like.
No, you're right. It was a little painful. It really was. Because at first I wasn't really thinking about it. And then as we were doing the shoot, I was like throwing like more blood on it and like cutting it more until the point where like the shirt is like tattered. And that's kind of when I was like, oh, it's gone. Like it's never to be like repaired again, because it was torn to shreds. Because I kept like, we were doing it to where it was like worse and worse, as like the battle went on. So I had scissors at the shoot, like tearing my sleeve off and whatever. That's kind of when I was like, oh,
yeah. What was
kind of
that?
sad, actually.
Because that's super interesting that I think people don't understand is that this, from my understanding, was done for a shoot purpose. And so obviously it starts out as and then you're modifying it as it goes on the shoot. And correct me if I'm wrong, but typically when you're shooting for cosplay stuff, you're not going to go modify a cosplay on a shoot for the most part.
Yeah.
So this is something that is obviously unique in that regard, and obviously, and also in your head, if I'm assuming you knew that was going to happen.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that it almost had to be done in micro adjustments as well, because if you go too far, you're going to miss a whole segment of like a set, if that makes any sense to anybody. So what was that like? And then like saying, oh, it's not enough, or you went too far type of thing, not like cutting it up.
No, we went it was a very slow process. So I was going little by little so that I didn't mess it up. So it was good. It was really fun. Honestly, it was really, really fun, especially because we had this big jug of fake blood. And we had like a spritzer bottle that we like watered down the fake blood and put it in like a spray bottle. So we were like, I was like trying to spray my face with the blood. So it's like spattered. And so eventually there's like too much blood to like salvage the costume, so I knew going into it we were going to tear it to shreds little by little, but it was fun. It was definitely different than normal shoots where everything has to be like really pretty and perfect and like in place. It was nice to just be like, oh, I like want to tear the arm off, okay, like let's go rip it right off of there.
And then obviously now Android 18 at some point most likely will be resurrected. And there's so many jokes that can come out of this. I mean, I legitimately could go through the line here. We got 7 Dragon Balls, so God forbid.
Right.
But I do want to talk about another Dragon Ball Z cosplay you've done, and that's your Bulma.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you've done 3 versions of that as well. And I think we spoke about the regular bunny version in our first interview.
I think so, yeah. I want to say.
Did you also have a sort of regular T-shirt from Dragon Ball, and then you've done a bikini version of her too?
Mm-hmm. So I think that was my first Colossal Con, was the bikini Bulma.
And so obviously, what prompted the last 2 Bulmas? Because those are more recent.
I just love Dragon Ball Z. I just wanted to be everyone. I don't know. I love Bulma. I just love strong women, honestly. And so we did Android, we did Bulma. I haven't done Videl yet somehow, but I don't know. I think you know what? You know what it was? It was because in the beginning, when I first started cosplaying, I kind of tried to stay away from characters that a lot of people had already cosplayed, because I didn't want to get lost. And I was trying to stand out.
That happens.
Yeah. And now I kind of don't care. So I think recently, my most recent Bulma, I think, was the Bunny Bulma. And that's kind of one that a lot of people have done. So I was kind of, when I first started cosplaying, I remember thinking, I can't do that. So many people have already done it. But now that I have left that thinking behind, rightfully so, I was like, let's go. I think it was Easter or something. And I thought about Bunny Bulma and I was like, it's perfect. And I ordered everything and made it.
So even to talk about that, because that's also interesting, where you just said that obviously when you first started out, you kind of stayed away from what everybody was doing. Mm-hmm. And we've seen it, you go to a convention and there's like 900 Harley Quinns. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying not to do that, but at the same time, obviously if you want to get attention, or you want to get somebody to take pictures of you, or photographers to take picture of you, you kind of need to have a separating factor. And I don't know if that was your initial plan, or that you just said, hey, I don't want to do what everybody's doing, because it's tricky in that way, where it's fun that there's like 900 Harley Quinns at a con.
Right.
At the same time, it does get old really quickly.
Right. And especially at a con where photographers' time is so valuable, because there's like a certain limited amount of hours in a day and there's a million people to take photos of. Unless you book a spot where you're actually paying the photographer, a lot of the time the photographers are just doing it because they love it. And for free completely. So if you are the 8th Harley Quinn that they've seen, they might not want to like do that with you, and that's fine. Totally fair. But yeah, that's kind of where I stood before. Also, just like, I was just also scared to cosplay something that so many people have done, because I was so new and I was a little intimidated.
And do you also feel though that since there's like 900 Harley Quinns, and I hate to pick on Harley Quinn,
I know. I love
it's the same
Harley.
thing with Deadpool. We can pick on Deadpool too because there's a
Yeah.
bunch of those as well.
Yeah.
But also because the character is so well done that there is more scrutiny to some degree with it, and that there has to be more things that need to be hit versus an obscure character or a character that isn't big enough yet. And I'll give an example. If you do Toriko from Toriko, that anime is not as big as an Attack on Titan, for instance. So it's not as well known. Or like I used to cosplay Amuro Ray from Gundam. That I have a lot more leeway with that character than I do if I was doing Naruto Uzumaki.
Yeah.
It's just my nature because of how big those two things are. First thing, the popularity. Except Gundam fans are the most picky, most difficult people in the world. It's not fair. They are the most picky people in the world, but I digress. The point still remains the same. So I'm curious how you feel on that, because I would imagine that factors in as well.
Yeah, that's super true. Like you said, Attack on Titan, everybody knows Attack on Titan. So if something's off, everyone will know. Also, if so many people have done it, there's going to be at least like 3 or 4 people that have absolutely nailed it, So you want to do it as well as everyone else. There's a lot of different factors, right? At the end of the day, it's cosplay and you're supposed to have fun, right? So you don't have to like put all that pressure on yourself, but it's hard not to. It's really hard not to.
Yeah. It's become complicated, the entire cosplay world, in the very
yeah.
And I'm sure we're going to talk about that to some degree later on, hopefully in this interview. Just throwing it out there. And then I just want to talk about another really quick one before we get into some of the new stuff as well, and that's your Yang, because I know that there's the old school Yang with the gauntlets and the yellow gauntlets, and she's got a particular jacket, and I guess shorts or hot pants. I don't know what they're called.
Yeah, something like that with like a skirt something on top. Yeah.
So I know that one happened with you. And obviously I think you had a yellow shirt with that and the orange bandana. And then obviously we have the version when her arm gets cut off. Spoiler alert. Sorry if you haven't seen Ruby.
Yeah.
You're late to the party. You know
my
now.
Years. Yeah.
And so obviously you did that version too. So obviously I'm curious how the first Yang version happened and what inspired that, for starters. And then we're going to talk about the second version, which is probably way cooler in many ways, especially that arm, because I'm super curious and I love cybernetic stuff. So obviously I love what happened to Yang. I like the fact that her arm got cut off and all that stuff. So
me too. It's funny that you brought Yang up because I haven't done that in so many years, but I love Yang as a character so much. And I always, you know how in anime a lot of people are typecast? It's usually the smart, brainy mom one or the happy-go-lucky sunshine kind of dumb one. And, there's always like the anime like umbrella that everybody falls under as characters for the most part. And I don't feel like I fit under any of them. So there were so many shows that I watched and was like, who do I relate to in this show? And the answer was always either no one or like a combination of like 3 or 4 characters. But when I watched Ruby, I was like, wow, I'm Yang. That's the first time I've ever been like, oh my God, I relate to a character 100%. Like I saw so many similarities between me and that character that I absolutely fell in love and was like, I want to be Yang forever. So I did the first version. And then I did the robot arm version for Katsucon. It was very rushed, but I did, I got like a black sleeve and I used Warbla, like thin foam and Warbla to just put all those little like pieces and painted it and weathered it and stuff. And then I just did, I think it was season 5 last year. I don't know. I love her. I would do all of her outfits if I could. unlimited time, unlimited resources.
So let's talk about that arm, because arm building, limb building in general in anime is difficult. Just because there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. Wearability is a big thing now, and I think it's become bigger in the last 2 years in the anime world and cosplay world also, for that matter, or I should say cosplay world, and building all stuff, making it wearable. And so what was that entire arm build like? You said, I mean, obviously it was rushed to some degree, but even still, like getting it all together and making sure that it looks like it's supposed to look like, because you can't just cut off your arm and then get an actual cyber arm attached, because that's really not the answer. To be authentic here.
I really toyed with the idea of tying the shirt sleeve in a knot and just like walking around the con like this for like a couple of minutes. But are you asking how I made it? Is that the question?
Yeah, I'm super curious because I think it's pretty well done, and I think it's awesome on how it's done, and it looks like as well as it could look. I mean, obviously, it's really hard to nail that. And I've seen a few other people nail it, but I haven't seen a lot of people truly take on that challenge, because it is complicated to do something like that. And so obviously, what was even the conception of it and the planning of it, because it's not something that's simple to do. And I speak to a lot of people who do Star Wars stuff, and people who build like Mando Merc, and like all that stuff is complicated as well. And this sort of falls under that similar, I guess, jurisdiction is a good word to use.
Yeah. I'm like terrified that I'm gonna have lipstick on my teeth. I keep being like, okay, I'm good.
I don't have that problem.
I know, it must be nice. So for the robot arm, where do we start? We start with patterning. So I actually did a couple of videos for Cosplay Supplies, which is a website that sells Worbla. So basically you take saran wrap your arm in it. You take tape and wrap your arm in the tape, and then you sort of just draw out what all of the pieces are supposed to look like on top of the masking tape. So you're like, okay, you have like a bunch of reference photos. You look like that meme, that Charlie Day meme, where there's like a bunch of calculations everywhere, and you're like, like acting crazy because you have all of these reference photos everywhere, and you're like, okay, like this goes like this here, and so you're mapping out like all of the different pieces, and then you cut it off your arm. You cut each little individual piece out of the paper or the tape, and then you have little patterns. So then you can put that down on foam or Worbla, and we could go over materials if you want, but then you can cut that out, and it's gonna like fit your arm perfectly. And that's how you would do something like that. I did it out of Worbla because when I first started cosplaying, I only used Worbla. That was the only thing I knew how to use. And I was very excited that I figured it out. So I only used Worbla for everything. And that was a huge mistake in some situations. But it was like the material I was most comfortable with. It took me a long time to figure out foam, which usually is the other way around. But I was comfortable with Worbla, so I was like, let's go with the Worbla.
hence the change in many ways, where Worbla and other materials similar to Worbla, I think there's one other material that's very similar to it, and I'd slip in my head, but obviously some of that stuff is not wearable. But calling it straight out what it is, and there are people who are at cons and they're like, oh, would you like to sit? Like, no, I'm good. There's a reason why.
Yeah.
It's been a massive shift in the last 2 years, as I stated, from with cosplayers of going from this needs to be perfect and needs to be A, B, C, and D authentic to now saying there's a little more leeway, I feel, in many situations. And so obviously, I think this thing came out really well, but Worbla can be very difficult to work with.
Yeah.
It's very frustrating, and this is why I don't cosplay, and this is why I don't play cosplays. But if I ever go back to doing it, which is a big if, I'd rather play with my Lego sets that have instructions and build my own custom Lego sets, which have instructions that I built. But I digress right there. So obviously, though, it did need to fit your arm and all that stuff, and that's I would imagine that's the biggest challenge in many ways, is actually making it fit your arm, because if it doesn't fit your arm, then there's no point in having it. Like,
right. Yeah, I think I thought about this before because I also started using foam a little bit more. Worbla is heavy. Worbla is, you can't move it. So if you don't know, Worbla is a thermoplastic. So it's a sheet, like a rolled up sheet of hard plastic. And when you heat it up with the heat gun, you can like bend it around like Play-Doh. And then when it cools off again, it gets hard again. So a lot of people will make something out of foam and then use Worbla to wrap around it. So it's heavy and it's thick and it's unmovable, which sounds exactly like what you want it to be for cosplay. But if you are trying to bend your arm and you can't, or sit down and you can't, or like if you like breastplates, for example, are really tough because you can't breathe because your chest can't, like your lungs can't, you know what I mean? So yeah, a lot of people are turning to foam now. And I was thinking about it too, because I have also been using foam a lot more. That I think, because cosplay is still a relatively new hobby, I think we're all getting old. Don't want to be uncomfortable anymore. I think we're over it. I feel like everybody who would tough it out when they were younger are like, nah. At least that's my reason.
I have my own theory, but
yeah. Well, also foam, there's so many more resources now with foam to make it look exactly like Worbla. So what's the point? And Worbla is also super expensive. And foam is, you can treat it the same way. You can bend it, prime it exactly the same. So yeah, there's other reasons too, but that's my reason.
And now let's jump into, because I'm not going to share my reason publicly, because the second I share my reason, I'm going to get so much pushback.
Oh, gee.
Which should give everybody an idea what my reason is going to. But, and I'm going to stop right there on my reasoning. But another Worbla heavy project was your Red Riot.
Mm-hmm.
And so obviously My Hero Academia is big. I had somebody on yesterday on my show from My Hero Academia. So that's super cool. And obviously, I think Worbla was a sponsor, or maybe a cosplay supply shop was. I'm not exactly sure, but obviously they were sort of collaborating on it. And so obviously, what was that like? Because this was a very heavy Worbla project, and some other things were going on. And obviously, Red Riot, I think, was it season 3 or season 4?
It was the newest outfit, so whatever season was out at the time, I don't remember. I think it was 4.
Red Riot's big debut, essentially, when they were going after Overhaul and his crew.
Mm-hmm.
Put it bluntly, that's what I'm assuming why it happened. Because Red Riot really wasn't relevant till then.
I loved his arc in the last season. It was so good.
So even that. So how did that even come about? Because super big, and this is sort of one of your big ones, or one of the new big ones that came out.
When the new season I kind of just cosplay as I get excited about things that are coming out. So when the last My Hero season was airing week by week, I was watching Kirishima get cooler, and I mean he's always been cool, but more he was coming into himself a little bit more. He believed in himself a little bit more. He had that amazing episode where they just only focused on him, and he absolutely destroyed it. And I don't know, I watched that and I was like, I want to make Kirishima now. That's what I want to do. So I made the belt, and The top and everything. The top was a lot. The breastplate was a lot because in the anime, Kirishima is shirtless. So I was trying to figure out how to translate that to me, who cannot be shirtless on the console.
I'm not going to complain.
So I was like, what do I do? I should probably do some sort of breastplate. So I just sort of was looking at armor, like armored breastplates, and I was taking little things off of some things and taking little things from other things, and eventually came up with this like cool conceptualized like circle thing that had his teeth, because his mask that's on his face has these little teeth like here and here. So I took those and I put them like around the top and ended up with something that seemed like it meshed.
So let's talk about that, because this is something that is fascinating. When obviously women do male characters, there has to be some type of modification. For the most part, if that male character is, shirtless, or, obviously has some male feature that can't be, so publicly displayed out in public, is the nicest way I could say this, and I think everybody knows what I'm saying. But you also need to remain true to the character. You
Right.
can't just throw on a T-shirt on Red Riot and be like, "I'm Red Riot, let's go," and everything else fits in. And so, how does? I mean, I think you answered part of it, but like, how do you even conceptualize saying, okay, this is? Do you get like a composite of the character saying, if this character has this feature and this feature and this feature, and now all this needs to, I guess, sort of sync up and work in synchrony, because it's kind of like, Goku's. We'll use Goku as an example on this. Goku wears orange and blue. So obviously his color scheme is orange and blue. And I think with Red Riot, he has a certain color scheme. And so obviously it's things like the teeth and even like his metal like mask and all that stuff. And even like his colors on his, armor and stuff is a certain way. So how does that even start clicking in your mind? And this is going to work, this is not going to work, and stuff like that. Because it's super interesting when we see female interpretations to some degree of a character.
That's what I think is the most fun, because getting art and having to replicate it 100% is fun, but it's not my favorite thing about cosplay. My favorite thing about cosplay is when I have a little bit of creative freedom. And that's why I like gender bending so much, because I like to take something and just like twist it a little bit to give it a little bit of my own little flair onto it. And that's what I did with Kirishima. I was so excited to figure out the top. I at first had a like black crop top on, and it just didn't feel right. It didn't feel like him. Like it didn't feel like his character. So I was like, maybe breastplate. And breastplates are something I can kind of like knock out quick because of my Warbler, my Warbler background. So I was like, let me just try it. So I put a little something together and I was like, okay, wait, we're getting somewhere. And then I just started adding like little bits like trim and then the teeth. And then I was like, okay, it's perfect. So I just kind of experimented until I got something cool. And that's what I like the most, is to just take a design and be able to make it mine, as opposed to doing like a one-on-one copy. Danielle Blue did, I think it was for AEX or something a while ago, this amazing Devil May Cry cosplay. And I have not played Devil May Cry, so I don't know what character she was doing, but she did a character that was shirtless. Was it Dante? Do you know Devil May Cry? The large red cape?
I haven't played Devil May
Cry. Okay, I don't know either. But the character was shirtless, but it had he had like a chest strap. So she took this chest strap and put it over her boobs. It was beautiful. I was like, genius. It's genius. So yeah, it's fun. It's super fun. It's my favorite thing.
And then how was Red Riot received? Because obviously it did very well on Instagram, and obviously big character moment. My Hero is an ensemble cast by definition, and so obviously through My Hero we get a bunch of stuff and we get highlights of certain characters. Obviously Deku is sort of the main character. All Might is a main character, And there's a few others that I'm not mentioning at the moment because we're going to mention them in a minute.
I know, I've done so many My Hero costumes.
And so, but even still, obviously in those few episodes, Red Riot sort of got his spotlight. And so how was this cosplay received? Because there really wasn't anything done like the way you did it.
Thank you. It was received really well, really well. And one of my friends who is at a lot of cons and works with a lot of voice actors and stuff, like booking them and all of that internal business, told me, I was with them the other day and they were like, I showed your Red Riot costume to Chris Sabat. And I was like, hello? Because he's like one of my favorite voice actors ever. He's Vegeta, in case anybody doesn't know. And he is All Might, I think. He's one of the characters. I think he's All Might. And he was like, he loved it so much. Like he was like looking at it and like swiping and he was really excited about it. And I was like, fuck, like, are you kidding me? Chris Sabat liked my Kirishima costume. Like, I can die happy. This is the greatest thing ever. So it went really well. And that, I think, was one of my favorite parts about it. I couldn't believe that. It was really cool.
And then we're going to go take Into a Valley for a second here, because obviously you did a few others that I want to talk about briefly. You did Mount Lady, which is cool. And so I would imagine this one was much easier than Red Riot. I would imagine.
Oh, yeah.
Because Mount Lady, for those, and I'm not trying to trivialize it, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's almost a bodysuit with a mask and sort of playing around. And really what I find interesting about Mount Lady is not necessarily at the con stuff that you've done with her, but more of all the photo shoots. Because there's a lot more stuff you could do in a photo shoot with Mount Lady than you could do technically at a con, in my opinion, at the very least. Because for those who don't know, Mount Lady's quirk is like she's very vain. She loves attention. And on top of all that, she's sort of become a giant. And so obviously you can manipulate an entire background in a photo. You really can't do that at a con.
Right, exactly. It's way more fun it's nice to go to cons and stuff because she can be small, so it makes sense. But it is a lot of fun to be not at a con doing a photo shoot and be able to manipulate the background like that with angles and stuff like that. But yeah, it was way easier than Kirishima. It's a bodysuit and a blonde wig, a mask, and then horns. And then for cons, I got these clear high heels, so I got a little boost of height. But yeah, it's way easier than something armor based.
I view Mount Lady as a photo shoot cosplay versus a con cosplay. And a con cosplay, that doesn't mean a con cosplay can't be a photo shoot cosplay. But definitely I find Mount Lady to be more in the photo shoot element, which is cool because there's some great photos of you doing all that stuff and obviously being right next to a building and it's great. And then I think the cosplay that really signifies the last few years, I think last year, is your Bako cosplay.
Yeah.
And so this was, I don't know if it was debuted at Anime Expo, but I know that what was it?
It was Katsucon.
So I know that it came out at Katsucon, and obviously Katsucon's where all the big cosplay stuff sort of drops. And you're somewhat in that big cosplay group dropping element at this point. But then fast forward to Anime Expo, you were a guest with cosplay photography in their booth. And Anime Expo, I think that's out west, right? That's in Cali. I think, right?
Yeah, it's California. Yeah.
And so what was that like? Because that's kind of a big deal. It's a big con. And obviously you're in their booth, you're a guest, and there's a lot of attention. And obviously there's a lot of stuff going on with this cosplay. Obviously it's a gender bend with some twists, and you got, some nice touches on it. I really like the belt. I like the fact that he has grenades actual grenades. I think that's cool. I like his, weapons. I'm not exactly sure what he calls them, but they're pretty cool, and those things are awesome.
I call them grenade hands because that's what they look like to me.
And it's very much like bazooka weapons in many ways. And
Yeah.
so what was that entire build like? And then dropping it at CatcherCon and then getting invited to a few cons and Anime Expo to be a guest, because it's kind of, gives it a lot more credibility in many ways.
Right. Like I said, I love doing gender bends. Bakugo, I love as a character, and I hate him at the same time. But I also I'm always drawn to the crazy fiery characters because I am the opposite of that in real life, and so I'm like, ooh, that's fun, different, and exciting. So Bakugo, I loved his outfit, and I always was entertained with him in the show, and he's getting a cool come up arc now. I'm very excited about, but I don't know. I wanted to cosplay him because for me, cosplay is it was always stepping out of my comfort zone. So for me to embody characteristics like Bakugo that I don't have in real life, I'm drawn to that type of character. Like, let me be something that I'm not usually, which is definitely Bakugo. And it's fun to put that on, put it on, and then embody that, be that. How do I pose for these photos that make me look like a pretentious asshole? What do I do? How do I be that? And it's kind of like a fun little not quest, but quest. You know what I mean? It's a fun little thing to try,
Yeah, and to even go further off of that, obviously, Bako, there's a big discussion in the My Hero Academia community where who is the main star of My Hero Academia, who is the real hero, who should be the number one hero. Obviously, there's the discussion of Deku, Bakugo, Todoroki, and then there's a few others. Red Riot had his few moments. And so it's kind of nice when you're not doing Deku, because everybody sort of gravitates to some degree towards Deku. And then it's so what even prompted that? Because I'm sure that you were looking at saying there's Deku here, there's All Might is also thrown out there, and there's a bunch of people who do awesome All Mights, and I've spoken to a bunch of people who do stuff like that, and there's a bunch of people who do a bunch of great characters. So obviously, Bako. Technically, I guess Bakugo is a main character, right?
Yeah, I would consider Bakugo a main character. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that I don't like Deku. It's not a character that I like. Similar to Eren in Attack on Titan, but that's kind of what I mean. I am always gravitated towards characters that are nothing like me. And Deku is the unsure, kind of insecure, and kind of complainy, and I'm like, oh God, I don't want that to be me. I don't want to embody that. So I would gravitate towards Kirishima or Bakugo to make costumes of, not Deku. Not to say that he's not great, because he is in his own ways, but he's just not my favorite. You know what I mean?
Well, I'll give an analogy. Bakugo is like the SWAT team moving in to break down a building.
Yeah.
You're not the commanding officer of the SWAT team, which is Deku. That's Bakugo for you.
Right.
In a nutshell.
Right.
So there you go.
Yeah. I don't love All Might's character design. That's why if I like a character but don't love the design, it's not something that I would want to invest time and money and energy into. I don't I don't want to wear a wig that sticks straight up. It just doesn't seem fun. That's why I never did All Might. But I've done so many other characters from My Hero, just not Deku and All Might. The two main ones really are the only two I haven't done.
Because I know you've done Todoroki, you've done Momo. I don't know I'm trying to think of who else you've done with this from My Hero at this point.
Who else? I did an Ochako a long time ago, Uraka. I did Todoroki.
Yeah.
I did Momo. I did a different version of Momo, and then I did there's one that I'm not remembering. Frosty, but I haven't taken photos of it yet. So
because one of the things about My Hero Academia that I think is really great for fans, and then even going further into cosplay, is that there's a lot of material there. There's a lot of richness. The world of My Hero as a whole is a very rich world.
yeah.
And so it's super, super interesting when we go into My Hero and we explore that world, because there is so much to pull out of, and there's so much imagery. And also there are a lot of people who do a lot of stuff in it. And there's a lot of top cosplayers. And there's also a bunch of people who are just starting out who have these awesome variants of their cosplays that are killing it. And so obviously there's a lot of stuff that's going on and what I call variants of characters. And so obviously that's something that I think that My Hero has done very well. I think One Piece has done it well. I think Dragon Ball Z has done it very well. And so I think that's something that really benefits the My Hero world in many ways. And so just to talk more about Bako, because I love Bako. I think he's a great character.
Yay, I love him too. I get a lot of shit for loving Bakugo as much as I love Bakugo.
So what was it even like making those weapons? Because I think those weapons are awesome.
Thank you. I had so much fun making those weapons. So I was super intimidated by them at first. But I'm going to shout out Stella Chu, who is incredible in every way. And is an incredible resource for the cosplay community as a whole, who has Bakugo gauntlet patterns in her Etsy store. So I got those, printed them out, and then proceeded to absolutely blow up her DMs, being like, how do I put this together? What about this part? Is this part this way or this way? And she was super helpful. And it's made it so easy. You just cut out the pieces. When you have a pattern, everything is like so much less intimidating to have to make. So you just pin the paper to the foam, cut it out, stick it together, and even the directions on there even told you like what millimeter foam to get, and they're really easy to follow. So that was as helpful as it could be. I would love to remake them, honestly. I think I can do them better now. I would like to remake them, honestly.
And then even talking about props, because I'm super curious about this. Obviously, cons have gotten complicated with props and different cons with different rules. And obviously, with everything that's happened in the last 5 years, and I think Anime Boston sort of changed the rules many ways, where, for those who don't know the story, the short version of the story is that there's a Pokemon card tournament, and there's an issue between two groups of people, and these people basically brought guns into a Pokemon tournament at a con, big deal, and could have been a very bad situation. And because of that, the Heinz Center in Anime Boston, which is where Anime Boston is, has metal detectors now. And so obviously a lot of cons reacted to that, and that's sort of under, not really spoken about. And let's be realistic, I think security in general at cons has become way more interesting. And we're going to talk about COVID in a minute, which adds a whole different level to it as well. But obviously different cons have different rules. And I would make the argument that some characters do very well without their props, and others don't do as well. Like your Bako would not be as good without those cannons. So how do you figure out what is acceptable, what is okay, what isn't okay? Because it is tricky at this point, and especially with rules that are always changing. And I have a feeling once we get back, in 2021, hopefully, maybe summer, but I'm very pessimistic, which means I'm always right. And I think it's going to be more like 2022.
Yeah, me too.
How do you manage and deal with all that? Because it's a tricky navigation, not to mention that you travel for cons. And if you're going to California, packing those two big cannons might not be the easiest thing to figure out how to get halfway across the country.
Yeah, I remember when I had to fly to Katsucon, I had to give them their own suitcase. Um, just ship them off by themselves. But the all of the conventions and events have a weapons policy on their website. So it's really easy to, as long as you go in and do your research, see what's allowed and what's not. And generally, props that are foam, wood, or Worbla are allowed, and anything with a sharp tip or like an actual weapon, obviously like steel or metal, isn't allowed, is like the general rule. But you can always email or like Facebook message cons and be like, hey, I'm bringing this, is this okay? And they'll usually tell you one way or the other. But otherwise, a lot of cons will just zip tie, like orange or yellow zip tie your weapon and call it a day. And then you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, that happens, and it's unfortunate, especially when it's like a nice orange.
I know. It sucks
it
when you
all.
want to take photos. Yeah. But there's like, I've strategically placed, I'm like, because they're just trying to do their job usually. So if I've asked them to put zip ties or those bracelet things in places where my hands go so that I know that if I take photos, I can block them or something like that. They usually will do that for you.
It also helps that you're attractive, I would
That's
imagine.
fair.
And I'm gonna drop that right there before I get into trouble right there. And then there's one more I want to talk about on the anime side, and that's your formal Leafeon.
Oh, mm-hmm.
We're going old school Pokemon.
Yeah, wow, that was a long time ago.
I love Pokemon, and I think Pokemon is amazing, and I know it's a far reach from My Hero Academia and all that stuff, but obviously this is sort of fun, and I don't know when this was dropped, but I like the fact that it's sort of formal. It's got an evening gown view to it and vibe to it, which is sort of cool. I don't know, are there still like anime con ball stuff that happens? Because that entire world just goes beyond me. I've never been to Katsucon, despite it being 25 miles from where I used to live. So I'm like the worst offender at all of this.
Yeah, there's a lot of cons have masquerade balls that you can go to, or like some sort of like fancy like after parties and stuff like that. That was based on fan art, and I'm trying to remember the artist's name that drew them. She did a like formal evening gown for each evolution, and I think it was what's her name? It'll come to me. And so a group of us got together and did that, and I was Leafeon. So I found this really pretty chiffon see-through leaf patterned fabric that I made like a little skirt out of, and I did my like foam Leafeon ears, and then I had a friend of mine who was just learning how to 3D print, and he wanted like he was already printing Pokeballs, and he volunteered to print all of our little like specialized Pokeballs for us. It was really nice, and it was a good time. It was a big group. We did that for Holiday Matsuri in Orlando, I think.
So what is that like to cosplay as a group? Because I know you've done some other stuff in group as well, and obviously groups have their advantages. Doing solo cosplays also have their advantages. Partnership type stuff has their advantages, and obviously, I guess part of it is that if you're in a big group, everybody in the group gets attention, and the idea is everybody gets more attention. Also, it makes more sense. Also, the cosplay itself might make more sense. Where if you have, a Flareon, a Vaporeon, and a Jolteon, obviously then you have an Eevee. That makes sense. And it helps booster and get attention. And so what was that like, having a bunch of, I guess, the Eevee crew, for lack of a better word here?
It was really fun. I think everybody's turned out really pretty. I think the group shots were really nice. It was like a group of friends too that were just having a good time. I think it's tough to do big group cosplays because it's hard to make sure that everybody is at a certain place at a certain time with so many like variables with so many different people. But when it works out, it's really fun. My personal favorite thing to do is like groups of 2 or 3 because it's really easy to be like, here's what we do. Everybody get together. And it's easier to manage. So that's my favorite. Trios and duos.
And obviously, you're in a very different bracket, and I'm going to say this, and it's going to sound a certain way, and I know how it's going to sound, but you're at a high level of cosplay. A lot of people follow you on Instagram, and you have a lot of friends who are in similar, positions on Instagram. And so when you're cosplaying as a group, and I don't know if this applies to you, but it also just even going beyond con and everybody meeting up and everybody getting there, is there ever a concern about everybody matching and the quality and it being like, if you do your Leafeon with certain ears, somebody that has a completely different thing, it could off throw it, I would imagine. Because I've heard that happen before where if you're not in close communication or if somebody thinks that you're using this material when everybody's doing this material, it could work out great or it could work out as a nightmare. So and also when you're dealing with like 10 people, more things can go wrong when you're dealing with 2. It's just Murphy's law.
Right. It depends.
Under the bus. We're not throwing anybody under the bus.
No.
All your friends, they can hurt me in more way than one. They can get me totally kicked off Twitter or Instagram or just like bombarded. So I have to very carefully watch my step here.
No, nothing cancelable about this. But no, it's true. It depends on what kind of group you want to do. So if it's like a casual, chill group, I think the Evolutions was a pretty casual, chill group. It depends. That was like no big deal. We can use whatever we want to, do your thing. Everybody just show up. That's the whole thing. As long as you show up, it depends. But I think that there just has to be like clear communication in the beginning on what it is. If it's like casual chill group, then it's a casual chill group. Whereas like I remember we did like a Viking group in Calgary where we all did like original characters and we traveled to Calgary. Or we were at Fan Expo Calgary and we all stayed a couple extra days and it was like a very coordinated effort where everybody was like, okay, like this is when we were sending constant progress photos and like making sure that everybody matched. And I remember one of us had resin casts that they had made, and they brought to the convention like just a shitload of like resin casted objects, and was like skulls and little like pieces, and so that we could all put them on each other and like all match. So it just depends. As long as you have like upfront clear communication on everybody's goals with the group, then it'll be a success. You just have to make your boundaries clear, I think.
No, that makes complete sense. And then I want to talk about some of the comic stuff also, and some of the video game stuff, because you're into that, and also it fits really well with your Twitch. And so obviously, Supergirl is another one that you're known for, both the blue version and the white version. It's very Michael Turner-esque. I don't know if you know who Michael Turner is.
I don't know.
Michael Turner is the best Supergirl artist ever was. He passed away a while ago, but so good. Died way too young, taken away from us way too soon. But obviously, your Supergirl is fantastic, and you've worn it at cons. I know that it's worn up in Canada a bunch of times. And so, what is the inspiration for Supergirl? Because I think people really love your Supergirls. Very simply put, I love badass blondes. Like, that's my favorite thing. So it just resonated with me a lot as a kid, and it just resonates with me now even more as an adult. Like, as I grow older, the more I'm like, ooh, like another one, another one. So Supergirl I love because she just fits in that same category of like
no bullshit, we're gonna get shit done. I can take care of myself, I'm independent, you know what I mean? Just like she's powerful, and she like isn't the like trope of the dumb blonde that is just everywhere.
Did you also feel that obviously the Supergirl TV show is amazing? I just finished season 1. So good. It's so well done. You know, DC does good TV. Marvel does probably better TV. DC does the best animation, and Supergirl kills it in the animation as well. And obviously, I think that a lot of people, you know, also are now turned on to Supergirl a lot more than 5 years ago they were. And so, do you think that also helps to some degree that the TV show is really good? And I think we only had 5 seasons, from my understanding. But obviously, also there's going to be some more stuff that's coming out with Supergirl, just because HBO Max knows what they're doing. And so, how does that impact your cosplays with Supergirl?
So I only watched the first like 2 episodes of Supergirl.
Yeah, we're done here. I'm gonna leave.
So I don't know a lot about the TV show. I watched the animated series and just like stuff from back in the day, like Saturday morning cartoons, like I said. My focus was always in gaming. And that's kind of where I entered nerd world. And then I got introduced to anime and then comics. So comics was like kind of the last one where, and I know that you collect comics, so this is like a direct attack on you. But
it's all right. It's all right. I'll just
comic world very late. Sorry?
I'll just be counting my bank accounts. I'm just going to be looking at my portfolio. Excuse me.
So yeah, that's why my like cosplay portfolio has a lot less comics than it does anything else. But I can always get behind like strong independent woman, you know what I mean? So
another one is Black Canary.
Yes. Love Black Canary. I love Black Canary.
She has an interesting taste in men. Let's put it that way.
No.
Like, you know, Oliver Quinn is super interesting character. I'm surprised he wasn't at the inauguration with Bernie. And if anybody knows anything about Green Arrow, what happens, they'll understand exactly why I mentioned that comment. And if anybody goes back into my backlog, they'll also understand why I mentioned that. Because I'll briefly tell the story because it's great. So Oliver Quinn is very socialist in DC, and he was very much developed by Denny O'Neil, who was a very progressive DC comic writer who basically was the editor on Batman and was the editor for Chuck Dixon on the creation of Bane, and was big into that on Nightfall, which is what the 3rd Batman movie by Christopher Nolan is somewhat based off of. So that's why I make this statement, because it's super interesting. And, you know, with the meme of Bernie going around, I'm just surprised nobody's had put them at a table yet together.
I earlier today I asked my Discord if they could put Bernie in the back of some of my cosplay photos, and they did not disappoint. I've been waiting to post them all day. There's some really good ones. Somebody put him in the back of my Lara Croft cave photo, and that's one's probably my favorite.
There's some interesting stuff, but getting back to Black Canary, enough about Bernie Sanders. That's next week's episode. the memes, Bernie style. But your Black Canary is super interesting. Obviously, she's got her Black Canary suit on, and then you got a blue bomber jacket on, and blonde, obviously, and Black Canary, Birds of Prey, straight out of Birds of Prey, really. And so, obviously, that's a Chuck Dixon invention, by the way, which is crazy. So, I mean, this is like all old school DC stuff that all this stuff comes out of. So, obviously, I'm going to take a leap of faith here, and your Black Canary definitely was impacted some degree by the Birds of Prey movie and some of the animation stuff and probably some of the Justice League stuff. Justice League Unlimited is probably a fair guess. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
So like, and then even building this, like, what like was the drive and the inspiration? Because obviously it's very much a well-received cosplay.
Mm-hmm. So the photographer that I work with a lot, David Love, he is in Orlando with me, and he was one of the first people that I ever worked with cosplay and taking photos and anything. And that was back in like 2014 or 15. So we've been taking photos together for as long as I can remember. And his thing is comics. And he loves to do photos that are. He's very skilled in graphic design, and so he does really good photos. But then he also does really good photo manipulations, where he puts different backgrounds and stuff in the photos really seamlessly. So he loves to do moody stuff. He loves to do Batman. He loves to do comic characters. He loves to do DC characters. He likes the fight scenes and like Black Canary Scream, like action photos and stuff. So he was kind of the one at first that was like, you trying to do some Black Canary or like like characters that because I was bringing him like some anime stuff. I brought him Android 18 and stuff, and he was like, okay, we were doing Time for Print, which is just basically like collabs. We're like working with each other for free. I'm bringing costumes, he's doing photos. And he was like, okay, well, I'm shooting what you want to shoot. How about what I want to shoot? So he was the one who was like, maybe do like Sue Storm, do Black Canary and some like Zatanna, stuff like that. And I was like, okay. And then I started to like research the characters because I like wanted to know about them if I was going to like be them. So I would watch YouTube videos on Black Canary and like stuff like that. And I knew who Black Canary was, but not her like whole big backstory. And I did the same for Captain Marvel and Miss Marvel. And so
to even talk about that, because I think this is super interesting. One of the best things that I did in probably the last 10 months is I started to shut the fuck up and listen. It sounds crazy, and I've been receptive to a lot of ideas in general, and things have shifted me. And I know, and I recognize that I put up a quote on my Facebook saying, if I walk into a room and I'm the smartest person in the room, there's something wrong.
Yeah, I just saw that actually.
And so it's a super, super interesting quote. And I think it speaks true, meaning that, sometimes you got to listen to other people's ideas because they might have something. That's what it seems like happened to you with the comic stuff and how you got into this, where somebody had this idea, said, hey, you should, maybe they didn't say it so nicely the way I'm saying it, so cohesively. I've had a lot of time to think about this in the last 6 months, this statement, not particular for this interview, but if I did and I knew 6 months in advance, that'd be amazing cognitive functioning. You can call me Professor X, but that's not the point here. But even this idea that, what is that like for you to listen and take other people's, I guess, input and advice, because it seems that it has been extremely beneficial to you.
I love that stuff. I love to take in other people's ideas and suggestions. I have a tab in my Discord called suggestions, where people are just like vomiting ideas at me all the time. And I'm like, yes, like, what should I cosplay? What should I do? What should I watch? So I love that stuff. And when David was like, let's do comic book characters, I like kind of let him drive, you know what I mean? Like, I looked at the characters, I made the costumes, and then I was like, I'm here, what do I do? And so we would look at like reference photos together of their powers. We would watch YouTube videos and like sit down for hours and just like look at like different things that character did, and we would come up with like photo ideas and stuff, and it was really fun. And that's kind of like what dipped my toe into comic book world. And then I like got into it more and more as I cosplayed. So yeah, it was really beneficial, and I appreciate him. We're still working together, so he's great.
And then I want to really quickly jump to video game stuff before we start talking about cons and COVID and all the fun stuff that everybody wants to know, because I have a different opinion than most people on this entire COVID stuff and where it's going and all that stuff. And I'm obviously a fan looking in, and you're an insider looking out. But before we get to that, I do want to talk about what you've done for Epic 7 Global, and I'm
Okay.
probably going to get this name wrong, so I'm not even going to attempt. But I know that
Mm-hmm.
you cosplayed a character or one of their characters in their game that they were debuting at New York Comic Con 2019. And so how did that all come about, and what was that like? And because it's sort of cool. I mean, and I'll be completely honest, I never heard of Epic 7 Global. I don't know much about them, and I'm completely honest, but still a cool thing happening. It's obviously a New York Comic Con, and you're in their booth, and you're one of their characters. I don't know how for the entire 4 days of New York Comic Con, or was it part time? I'm not exactly sure, but I'm sure you're going to tell us.
It was all 4 days. Yeah. So Epic 7 is a mobile game. I am also not familiar with Mobile Game World. It's a I want to say Japanese or Korean company, and a lot of their player base, I believe, is in Korea. So that's probably why you haven't heard of it. But it does have like a decent following in the US, kind of like Arknights. Yeah, there's like all of these mobile games that have like huge player bases that I would have never heard of before, because I spend enough time on my phone and I don't want to play games on my phone too. So I don't play a lot of mobile games, but Epic 7 is a mobile game. It has gorgeous waifus, of course, and so they hired three cosplayers to make costumes based on their characters and wear them to New York Comic Con. And I was Araminthia. And I just stood on their stage. What we did was we rotated 15 minutes off, 15 minutes on, all day, every day. So we would stand on stage, people would come up, take photos with us, and the line was out the door. So it must have a huge player base. And it was a huge stage right when you first walked into New York Comic Con. So they paid for like great real estate too on the con floor. But people would come up, take photos with us all day. And then they had another group of cosplayers from outside of the US that we would trade with. And we would just, swap back and forth all day. It was super fun. It was very tiring. And I'm pretty sure I slept for like 3 days afterward, because trying to pose for 4 days straight is crazy. But it was so much fun, and I'm glad that they asked me to do it. It was a good experience.
And New York Comic Con is
and it was New York Comic Con. It was my first time at New York Comic Con. I had no idea what to expect.
It's a crazy con. The Javits Center is not good, to put it bluntly. I am originally from New York. I now am in Connecticut. I've been to the Javits Center for I think like 4 or 5 cons, and it's what you call a piece of shit. Not saying New York Comic Con is bad, but that convention center is probably about 30 years outdated at this point. So it's rough, but still pretty cool. And then the last video game I want to talk about, and I know I'm missing a bunch, is Animal Crossing. That you've done, and I think it's Orville and Wilbur. And
I was like, what did I do from Animal Crossing? Yes, I did with Theo. Yeah. We did the Wilbur Brothers.
I don't know much about this. I'm out of the Animal Crossing loop. Last game I played was New Leaf. So I traded Nintendo for Xbox. I really wanted to play Halo. What can I say?
I'm with you. I have my sword. I'm here with you.
I want to play Halo and Forza Horizon 4. It's so good. Both those games are so good. But anyhow, how did this come about? Because obviously you're cosplaying with Theo, and love Theo, and what Theo does.
He's the best.
And I love these two cosplays because I just think they're funny and they're bright and they're cheerful, and I just smile when I see them. If that makes any sense. I don't think you can do anything but smile with Animal Crossing.
No. Yeah.
There are very few moments in Animal Crossing that make me sad, like when my neighbor moves.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Or when you haven't played in a long time and they're like, wow, it's been 3 months since I've seen you. And you're like, I'm so sorry. Or when they're sick and they're like coughing. Yeah. I know what you mean.
I got very upset when my neighbor moved. Tiffany the rat. It was disturbing, and I was like upset for a week.
Ah,
And then she moved to my friend's village, and then I went. It was
oh
great.
no, rub it in your face.
I was so upset. And then she moved back, which is great.
Oh, good, good. Yeah. So Theo and I live together. We do a lot of cosplays together, and we have a lot of like cosplay ideas that we want to do together. That I think was Theo's idea, wanting to do the Wright brothers. So Orville and Wilbur are the dodo birds in Animal Crossing that fly you to different villages and stuff. So we
I'm
did.
so out of the loop. I'm so out of the loop.
Oh,
It's like
really?
this is all news to me.
Oh, yeah. You can so you buy a ticket, you buy like plane tickets, and then you take it to I think Orville is the one at the desk, and I think Wilbur's the one that drives the planes. But you take it to one of them at the desk, and you're like, I want to go here, and they're like, okay, get in my brother's plane, and then the brother like drives you around. So we were like, we want to do these characters, but we want to do like cute human versions. So it was like a brother sister type of thing where I did the like pilot with the big glasses, and Theo did the guy at the desk. And so he took a bunch of photos like at the desk with like a pen being like, oh, what can I do for you? And I took photos with like the glasses being like, let's go, with the big headset, the big aviation headset. It was fun. It was just, we did it in our living room. It was super fun.
Because from my understanding is that this is what is known, and I'm dubbing it, and I'm sure somebody's already called it, but it's a COVID cosplay.
Yes.
If that's not taken already, and somebody hasn't godfathered that word, that's my thing now. It's because and this sort of leads me into what I want to talk about, where obviously COVID hit. I think it's safe to say mid-March and March usually is typically the fair starting time for when cons started getting canceled. Canceling of Emerald City Comic Con, I guess, is technically the start of all of this. And then we started going into like a 2-week lockdown, and then everything was up in the air. And so I'm curious because you do a bunch of cons. And so what was that like? Because for me, I was supposed to just present at a con as a panelist in April for AwesomeCon in DC, and that thing got pushed back. But it didn't get canceled till a week before. Really stressful, really stressful. And I live in DC, and there wasn't a travel issue. But what were you viewing? Because I know that you do a bunch of cons, both going as a fan and also being a guest. And so what was that, not even from just from a stress standpoint and not even from a business standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, it's there's different emotions there, all kinds of emotions. I miss my friends. You know, I did a lot of cons like for fun, because I love the people that I've met through cons, and it's kind of just part of my life to meet up with them and hang out with them. Like KatsuCon, like I don't think people guest at KatsuCon. I think everybody just goes to hang out. I do miss that. I don't miss having to travel like twice a month and rush every costume build I've ever tried to make. That I'm like kind of relieved about, that I can kind of like take a deep breath and not have to con crunch. But I also am sad because I had a lot of stuff booked for 2020 that I didn't get to do. And one of them was Armageddon Expo, which is in New Zealand. And I have like the only place I've ever wanted to travel to is New Zealand. And I was so excited because they were, you know, paying my way out there, because they're having me out at their con. And we had booked an extra like 2 weeks of travel time, where I like after the convention, I could just explore. I was very excited. I like was looking forward to it for so long, like almost a whole year. They booked me in advance. And then that was in, I think it was like April, like 2nd or 3rd. And obviously New Zealand was one of the strictest countries to be like, pandemic, like nobody's coming in.
The U.S. might not even allow you to fly out.
Right.
It's not even New Zealand. The U.S. most likely would have not allowed you to have flown out, or you would not have been allowed back in.
Right, exactly. And yeah, a lot of we would have had to quarantine for 2 weeks, which would have made us miss the con either way. So yeah, no, they can't. I think they went virtual or something. But yeah, that was upsetting. That was sad. But I'm hopeful that once everything's
to even go off of that, because obviously I mean, it's no secret, 2020 was wrecked. I mean, this is how wrecked it was. WrestleMania, which is the biggest wrestling event, got canceled essentially, and was a fanless WrestleMania. We've had Major League Baseball had a shortened season. The NBA, which is bigger than any anime con. No offense to any Comic Con or Anime Con, was on a shortened season playoff elimination in a bubble. Mm-hmm. Like, this is so obviously entertainment as a whole sector was wrecked, and the movie industry might be done at this point due to COVID. So obviously cons are going to be sort of the last thing that comes back with all the other stuff. And so I'm curious, because you're more of an insider and I'm the outsider. I mean, I do panels, but it's very different doing a panel than being a guest at a con and even cosplay stuff. Because, and I know how this is going to sound. It's going to sound messed up, but cosplay is definitely more of a social touchy type of thing, meaning that you are within an arm of somebody, while when I'm doing a panel, I'm legitly like 10 feet away from somebody speaking. Mm-hmm. It's a big difference on how that works. So I'm curious how you see all this going when cons come back. How's it going to work? Because no offense to and I'm not one of those people that say COVID is a hoax or anything, but if I paid $90 to go to a con and I want to take a picture with a cosplayer and they're wearing a mask, I'm not going to be too happy about that, and it ruins cosplay. Because no offense, but Harley Quinn doesn't wear a mask, everybody. And so obviously that's an issue in of itself. And then not to mention that, how do you enforce that? How do you control that? And so I'm really curious with all of that, how you feel it's going to go. Because, and then obviously the entire contract side and the guarantees and all that stuff as well. And I have an entire article on my website about this that nobody's read. Nobody's read the article on how it all works. And I took a wild guess at it, and I showed it to like 50 people do it. They're like, damn, you nailed it. But I'm just curious how you see it all working, because clearly it's complicated, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. I think it depends on your comfort level, right, as a guest as well, because you are meeting however many hundred people per day.
1,000?
Yeah, if not more. Yeah. So I personally am not going to want to go back to a convention in person for at least another year. I'm not comfortable hugging people, even with a mask on. So
I'm going to throw another thing out there, because again, I said I have a very different opinion. I think that we're right now in for a rough economic year. Mm-hmm. I really think it. I was expecting to be completely honest with you. I was expecting in 2016 we were going to have a recession. The fact that we had it in 2020 was, and there was a lot of reasons for it. But obviously I think we're going to have a rough economic year. And I hate to say this, but cons are a luxury item. If you have to choose between food and water and shelter and your kid's college, or, your kid's schooling versus a con, hate to say it, but that's sort of the last thing that kind of comes out, because it's very much a luxury item, and it's at the end of the tail versus at the front of the mouth. I guess it is the way I would view it. And so I don't know if there's going to be a demand for it this year. I think there will eventually be a demand. And then on top of that, it's also a comfort level. I think you said very much for the fans, more so than the guests, because I'm a fan panelist, so I don't get paid to present. And I do it because I would like to do it, and I'm hoping that I will eventually get paid. But one of the things that I think I don't feel comfortable as a fan right now. I don't, because con crud is real, and so
we already all get sick after con.
and so if you're getting paid and I'm not getting paid and I don't feel comfortable, I think my priority comes first thing, especially if I'm paying to be there. And it sounds messed up, but I think that's how the priority chain goes. And so if the fans don't feel comfortable, then and the guests don't feel comfortable, then I don't think the con can happen until those two things are equal and everybody feels comfortable.
Yeah.
And so that kind of leads me into my next position, is that how do you feel about virtual cons? Because it's tricky. It's super tricky what's going on with them, because some of them are doing okay and some of them are doing not okay. And I've seen a bunch of stuff pop up, and obviously, it's complicated. It's super complicated, and there's something missing.
Yeah, I think virtual cons, it's a harder uncharted territory to navigate. I haven't seen anybody really plunge in and do it. You know what I mean? I
could tell you one company that's killing it.
Oh yeah, I've seen a couple conventions do virtual panels. I did a virtual panel for GalaxyCon, and I know people have been doing virtual costume contests, and I judged one of those, and I had a good time. But I haven't seen a lot of other types of virtual cons happen.
So Zenescope, which is a comic company, they run a monthly virtual guest panel / shopping network type thing, and they're probably pulling in 80 to 100,000 easy.
That's awesome.
And every Zenescope fan loves it, because we're getting everything we want directly delivered to our door at that and it's brilliant, and that's my estimation on it, so don't quote me, but they're selling stuff, and sometimes they have big cons over 3 days, sometimes they just have it over 3 hours in a month. But it's this idea that I'm getting every single comic I want, and then they bring on people for interviews, and they've brought on a bunch of people, and I think that's more the future at this stage. And so I think that cons will come back, but I don't think that this type of stuff, including this interview and this type of stuff, is going to end. So I think this stuff is here to stay, because obviously you're on Twitch, and I'm sure that your Twitch stream has expanded massively in the last, I would say, 9-10 months. I think probably YouTube, your Instagram has grown. I mean, we were speaking before, just so everybody knows, the last time we spoke 4 years ago, you had 220,000 Instagram followers, and now you have 629,000. It's a big jump in 4 years.
Yeah.
And so obviously, and I don't know how much of that growth was from in the last 10 months, but obviously with everybody being home, some of it has to be.
Oh yeah, a lot of it had to do with kind of having the time to focus on it, instead of having to kind of scramble to put a costume together and go over here and put a costume together, go over here. With all of the time to actually sit down and be okay, what do I want to do with Instagram? It kind of helped a lot, especially with YouTube and stuff too, Twitch kind of stuff. I wanted to do YouTube content, and I just didn't have the time, and now I do. So I'm trying to put that together now, actually.
Well, on that note, I think I covered as much as I would like to cover, and there's about, I think there's 30 or 40 more cosplays we could have easily spoke about, easily. But I do want to give you an opportunity to promote yourself. I know that you have Twitch, YouTube, Instagram. Do you have a website? I don't know if you have a website.
I do. It's just DanielleDeNicola.com.
And then I know you have a bunch of stuff like Patreon. I know you have an OnlyFans. I don't know what else you have. I don't know if you're on Rumble. Rumble's fun. Rumble's fun. um, but I digress on the Rumble part. But I know Discord, but I don't know how your Discord works. And then anything else you have, because you got some other stuff going on as well.
Yeah, I mean, the big Twitter, Facebook, Instagrams, all Danielle DeNicola, except Twitter has one less character available than my name. So I took out the E in my last name. And then, yeah, Patreon OnlyFans is all Danielle DeNicola as well. YouTube, Twitch for like live video gaming stuff. I'm working on actually right now putting together a YouTube series that is sort of more educational for people who want to open print stores or do like small business, online businesses from home, that I am trying to like map out right now, because it's something that I like to teach people a lot that don't necessarily know like the best way to ship a like print or the best place to get the envelopes and stuff like that. So I'm working on that right now. I think that's everything. I have a website, DanielleDeNicola.com, that has like links to everything that I've ever done. So it's my hub.
Well, on that note, and I've been saying this to everybody, big, small, everybody in between, you have to support who you like at this point. And obviously supporting people economically with whatever merch they have is ideal. So if you have the extra cash, or you like somebody you see and you want to move your expenditures around for the month and you want to buy a print or something else that they're offering, I absolutely recommend you go do that. But if you're in a situation, and look, let's face it, COVID has wrecked a bunch of people, it's done a lot of damage, and there's a lot of people struggling out there. And if your objective right now is to keep your four walls safe, cover your rent, cover your mortgage, keep the electricity on, keep the water on, keep food on the table, make sure your family's okay, make sure your pet is okay, or you just want to, make sure you have a social safety net and that you have an emergency fund, because I think things are about to get tougher. And since I'm a pessimistic person, I'm always right. But seriously, if that's your scenario, you should be following people on social media. Social media, Twitter's free, Instagram's free, Facebook is free, check out somebody's website is free, and it does make a difference. It's super important.
Yeah, Twitch is free. Twitch is one of my favorite platforms. Honestly, you just hang out with people and vibe, and it's awesome.
And so obviously most social media is free. YouTube's free for as well. And so you should definitely be following people on any of the major six, because it is super important and it does make a difference. And it might not seem like it does, but it's super important. And especially if you're in an economic hard time where you can't support somebody economically, you should be supporting somebody at least by subscribing to their social media, and not all their social media, but at least one of them. But if you would like to subscribe to all their social media, please go do so, and you'll make sure that you get brownie points for doing that, and you'll also be informed on anything that's going on as well. Because what's probably going to happen in the next 6 months is that stuff is going to start being announced for cons 6 to 8 months. And obviously, I'm sure you announce on Twitter and on Facebook and other stuff where you're going to be and what's going to happen. Instagram, I know that you announce as well. And so that's another good reason to subscribe and like all these pages. And having said all that, I'm going to give you the final word, because I think I've promoted you well enough, and I can only lead people to follow.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. Like I said, I do Twitch 3 days a week. It's probably my favorite thing that I'm doing right now. So if anybody out there wants to hang out and play games together, that's been like one of my favorite things to do, is hang out in Discord with everybody. We have game nights and stuff. So I think that's my final word, is come hang out in Discord and play games on Twitch with me.